Now, over the last few episodes, we have really been diving into this mod called Just Dire Things, and I've been having a lot of fun, but there's still some mechanics that we haven't fully covered yet, and one of those is the time crystals. And this is going to be a learning experience for me, just judging off of what the book has to say about it. Now, just in case you missed it, last episode we did some really cool stuff. We used, for example, Just Dire Things, and we automated the production of the alloys. And so now we can just craft the alloys on demand, and we're accelerating it with the Warden. Yes, we may or may not be draining the Warden of some sort of very suspicious fluid. And with that, I also created the portal gun. And so now I'm able to do things, for example, like travel to our AE2 grids just on the fly, and it is absolutely beautiful. But now, what exactly does time do with Just Dire Things? Well, from the looks of it, we're able to somehow reverse time or rewind time, but we're also able to time accelerate. I'm assuming very similar to our temporal pouch without the need to contain overall actual spent time in the game. But not only that, we gain access to the ultimate tool upgrade, Insta-Break. And when I say Insta-Break, it is actually Insta-Break, no time delay whatsoever, making this farm that you see right here even faster. And that's 100% going to be needed, because I do, in the next few episodes, want to dive into a mod that you may or may not have heard of before, and that is Modernization Industrialization. Yes, you heard me right, the Greg Tech-ish mod we are going to be diving into a little bit. But I really wanted to prep myself for this, and that's why you've seen throughout this series all of the different ways of generating resources, because I feel the best way to play through that mod is to have a constant supply of resources, so that way everything can be made and everything has its own machine that does get made. So now let's start to think about all of the stuff that we've done so far and dive deeper into the Just Dire Things. So how do we get these time crystals? Well, it turns out that we're going to have to jump from dimension to dimension, acquiring this thing called time, right? And Dire does go on to say that time crystals are no trivial task to create, but apparently, which missed opportunity, would be very much worth our time. And before we can even do this, we need Shadow Pulse Goo, which is the final tier goo. Thankfully we have it, and we also, well, have other means of getting it, but it does say convert a budding amethyst block into budding time crystal blocks. Now, I think the intended method of moving a budding amethyst block, well, without using the cut paste gadget, which is also from Direwolf, I would assume that you would use this simple block swapper to at least move this block from one place to another. So we just need to shift right click here, or sorry, right click here to link this one, and then we go back to our base, and we should have the swapper placed right in front of our current shadow goo. And so if I break this block here and instead place a simple swapper and then right click this to then bind it, I should be able to push this button and that block should get teleported here. And it does. And by the way, there it goes. It just turned into the budding time crystal. And I'm assuming while it's in this current state of this like sort of glowing state, we've already achieved our first initial part. And I think what we're intended to do is have another swapper that is attached to this that then sends it into the next dimension. And according to our book, it looks like that next dimension is supposed to be the Nether. And the reason we need these to be able to move them is because it says right here, you cannot use Silk Touch to move this. So yeah, and it says some other ways, aka the simple swapper, which is what we're able to use to send this cross-dimensionally. But I'm almost positive that we could also use the cut paste tool. And I just wanted to use this just to kind of demonstrate that I think that the cut paste gadget will allow me to move this, unless he has like blacklisted it from being possible. But it looks like it's 100% doable and also movable within his own mod. Sneaky Dire. But I actually want to go about this by doing it the way that's intended, so I'm going to place this right back where it belongs. There we go. And instead, I want to use a swapper. So what I'll do is I'm going to place this swapper facing into it, and this is going to be a separate one that is going to be linked to, well, the Nether. You just have to make sure, I assume, that the chunk that this is in is loaded. And then that should be able to send this block to our next one, which we are going to link to the nether. And so what better spot than right here? So I'll place down this one, and then we just need to bind this location. And just like before, we take a button and we just need to give this a pulse redstone signal. And that should bring it into this world. It does say it's linked, and I'm almost positive it's linked in the other, unless we can't use a simple swapper to send this cross dimensions. For that, we might have to use an advanced swapper. In that case, that really changes things. Wait, I just sent it from this location, but I wasn't able to send it from the current location. Okay, so it does work. But for some reason, whenever I sent that a pulse, it didn't go through. Unless it just didn't receive that redstone signal. Okay, so now that we know that, I should be able to now head right back there to the nether. And it is in the nether laser area. Beautiful. Ah, and there it exists. Oh, and you can see the particles right there absorbing it. Ah, beautiful. And so while this is absorbing, I'm going to go ahead and then, I guess, set up another one that is then facing in here. And yeah, I'm just going to let this thing do its absorbing. I'm assuming we can also speed it up by using a temporal pouch and maybe later on using its own time on it. Because I don't know how long this needs to sit here and absorb. But now that that is done, let's go ahead and link. Whoa. Oh, that is so cool looking. And it now is bright orange. Okay, so now we need to link this to the end, because now we have to go and move this to the end. And now let's place this down, swapper, link it, and hope that I can send this a redstone signal. So just a regular button. And can I swap it now? I can. Okay, so it was working this time. And so now this has technically made it across all of these dimensions. Interesting. And this could be 100% automated, I would assume. You would just have to detect the block states, and once the state has changed, then you would send a redstone signal to the swappers. Pretty cool idea, honestly. And so this one is going to continue to complete. And once it completes, this should be a bud that can actually grow the crystals. So what I want to do is actually remove this swapper. Keep in mind, this actually stays linked. Just to make sure we maximize the amount of crystals that can spawn on this thing. Now it's just converted, so can I now accelerate this to get these crystals to grow quicker? Oh, I'm excited. Okay. And this should work just like any other budding amethyst from what I understand, right? It should start to grow crystals. Now, I did read the book. I know, nerd, but the book does say, do not break these until the crystal is 100% fully grown. Otherwise, you'll just get nothing. And you know what? I would assume that this is going to take some time. Yeah, probably to grow. I mean, that is kind of what this is about. It does seem that it is fast if I do accelerate it like this, and would probably be faster also if I accelerated it with, I don't know, the setup that we use to accelerate the other Just Dire things from Industrial Foregoing Souls. But unfortunately, there is no good way of transferring my soul network from that location outside of pipes. So yeah, it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. I can't send it to another dimension. Now, according to this, something to note is that this can actually run out of time energy mid crystal growth. So we may not even get a full crystal by the time it runs out of its time energy. So I'm going to speed this up as much as I can and hope that I can at least get one. If not, we have to make some advanced swappers and then technically swap the whole thing and the buds back into another dimension and repeat the whole process of sending it to the overworld and so on and so forth. Okay, so it just crashed and just ran out of time. And what we ended up with, what looks to be like 1, 2, 3, 4 fully finished time clusters. I do believe that these are all fully finished. So without further ado, we might as well go ahead and break at least one of them. And beautiful. I just got a time crystal. I mean, I can't complain there. Looks pretty good. All right, so I do have to deal with this guy that randomly decided to come attack me. I probably looked right at him. Oh, but I'm affected with slowness. Okay. So it does say in the book that while holding these time crystals, you may be affected by some weird mechanics. And yeah, I am definitely being affected by them. I'm getting random slowness hits. Seems my time has now become a little bit distorted. I also just got hit with some speed. You know what? It is kind of hilarious that that is the case. But let's go ahead and break this one. That's 2, and that is now 3. So we have 3 of them. It says wibbly wobbly. But keep in mind, like, to make a paradox machine, it's going to take these. We also have the time crystal block. And so just judging by how this worked, you know, we would have to keep these buds. We are now going to need the advanced version to keep these without losing them. Otherwise, I would just be wasting my time. Oh no, by the way, this guy is not my friend. The Elder of the Endermans, while I'm working on this, I do not want to deal with you right now. You know what? I could use this. Oh, that actually works perfect. Oh, never mind. He's going to teleport me around. Yes, this does not work well. Okay. Whew. Thankfully, that guy is gone now. But I only have enough crystals to make the insta-break that I want. But there's actually several things that it's kind of useful for. So repeating this process might be kind of useful. Now, the advanced swapper, like I said, lets you select an area to swap, which would be kind of nice for this whole setup. But you know what else I could use, which is just kind of hilarious? The cut paste gadget. So I can right click here and shift right click here to select this area. And then I can go into the edit and I can bring the area up and hit confirm. And now it should select all of this when we cut, including the crystals. And when we place it back down to paste, it's all still going to be there. So yes, if you have the cut paste tool, you can still use it for this. But I almost wonder in the future, Dyer, are you going to blacklist this stuff from being moved? Because that would be hilarious. So yes, I can just continue to repeat this process. This should switch over and consume the earth energy. You can see it's blue. Definitely working here. So yeah, I just need to rinse and repeat this operation while also being constantly changed. My time is being constantly changed by having those crystals on me. I have been told that I can put them in my backpack and that'll prevent that from happening, but there is time protection that you can apply on here. However, it does cost 2 of these crystals to technically make that upgrade. Now, while I am working on this, I do want to recommend, if you haven't subscribed already, you might as well do that and potentially give this video a huge thumbs up. I'm really bad about asking you guys mid-video, so yeah, the least you can do is possibly give this video a thumbs up. And, well, comment down below as well, especially if there's something that you dislike, because I really love to read your comments. Don't just hold in those comments, let them rip. I would really, really love to hear what you have to say, especially if it involves, like, teaching me something that I may not know. I really love reading those, and I do learn a lot from these videos. Now, that one was super unfortunate. This thing didn't even last long enough to, but to fully grow one other time crystal. Ouch, this process. And so now after doing this, I think 3 or 4 more times, sending it from the overworld to the nether back into the end, this one generated and finally has produced all of these crystals. So this took a little bit of time, I could say. But now I definitely have enough time crystals. This is fantastic. And I've almost used up all of my temporal pouch, definitely more than half, because I had like 20 something hours in there when we started. So there we go. And yes, we now, I think, have enough time crystals. We have 10 total, which is pretty good considering what all these time crystals get used for. And this should be more than enough to be able to make the time wand, which is one of the things that I definitely wanted to get up and running, and to be able to also make the insta-break upgrade, which requires 4 time crystals. So now that we have the time wand, I wonder how important the temporal pouch is actually going to be. Now, without actually automating this full process, I would assume that the temporal pouch is definitely very powerful still. But is the time wand better? And how much time fluid actually gets used? And another question, how do we even make time fluid? Well, it turns out that we make time fluid basically the same way we make portal fluid. So we need to make this polymorphic fluid first, just like this. And I don't know if this has to be in the end specifically, but we then drop a time crystal into it. And this right here turns into time fluid. So I need to just use a fluid container and right click it to pick it up. And once we have this done, I can now shift right click this to empty it, and it's going to store the time fluid into the time wand. So now I have time, but what can I do with it? Ah, so yes, it works just like the temporal pouch. However, it consumes the time fluid. And you see, I just took it up to 2 times, and that took a little bit. There's 8. Okay, and it actually doesn't take that much fluid. I'm a little bit surprised. And it does seem like it resets every time. Notice, by the way, the actual fluid itself is being consumed here. You know what? Pretty useful, considering this takes real time, where this can be 100% automated. Now, something you may be wondering, how do we actually detect the moment that this has changed? Well, I want to show you the advanced sensor. And this thing is absolutely a wonder, because you can not only specify to detect an area that is not exactly touching the sensor to emit a redstone signal, but you can also go in here, and when you add the budding, for example, the thing that we're going to be testing, adding the budding time block, you can right click in here and detect its stage. So the initial stage is 0, which would be its dead stage. And I'm assuming 1 is whenever it now has the stage that is charged with earth. The next one would be when it is charged in the nether. And then the final one is when it is finally charged here in this dimension. So we would be able to detect that stage on each one of these sensors. And we can definitely detect, hey, it has reached stage 0. Bam, once it's reached stage 0 again, yeet this bad boy back into the overworld and rinse and repeat. And you can also set an AoE. So we can have this thing, well, this particular block, we would not want an AoE, right? We would just want to detect the center block. But on the advanced swapper, the AoE is going to work just like this. It can be away from it and swap the block's position, and we can trigger that with a redstone signal. Now, before I get to automating this, which believe me is going to be pretty darn cool and actually a lot simpler than you might think, first we need to do this. So I do want to upgrade my tool that is down here. So to do this, let's go ahead and get this started. So I'll pop down in here, and I'm just going to grab out my Celestria tool. So we need to take this and just upgrade it to the next tier. So quickly make a upgrade, a smithing template, and we'll take this, keeping all of our current upgrades, and upgrade this. Perfect. So now we have a Calypso alloy pick. That's exactly what we need, but we really need the upgrade, and we have the time crystals in here to make it. So insta-break time. It is going to require some netherite tools, and we have plenty of these. Now, I would consider this stuff very late game. Like, this is this whole process of making the time crystal automation. Yeah, it costs several blocks of netherite. So keep in mind, I just made a bunch of advanced swappers and sensors, enough that I think is what I'm going to need. And yeah, it costs blocks upon blocks. So I think there was like at least 5 or 6 blocks of netherite that had to be processed there. But here we go. So I think this is it. If we take a look at what this is used for, there's only a couple of things, and this being one of them. Oh, yes. Let's go ahead and just request an entire block of these. It's so fast how the automation works for this. I'm absolutely in love with that. But without further ado, make the upgrade and take these netherite tools and turn them into an insta-break. And now this tool really gets to shine. So perfect. So let's go ahead and make sure we have the certain things selected. So we have the drop teleporter, the auto smelter, and now insta-break. It says right click for settings. There's a key to bind, custom binding. I think activate if equipped. We shouldn't have to set anything special here. It should just literally, when we click, it gets insta-mined. And the same thing should be happening inside of here. So as soon as I put that in, faster than light. I mean, it is so fast. So much faster now. We can actually see the scanning that happens from the lasers. So huge success when it comes to that and that farm, which is going to be very helpful later on. Now, let's get this time stuff automated to save me some time in the future. Now, for my calculations, it seems like we're going to need like a 3x3 space for this one block, and we're going to be swapping it from dimension to dimension. So I think the best way to go about doing this is by having a primary. This is the swapper that is going to actually do the detection and sending. And then up top, we're going to have a swapper that is going to be the thing that sends back. So this is actually the final process that is going to take it from the end and send it back to the overworld. Whereas down here, we're going to be doing some tests. So if I show you the area, I have this defined with a 1 by 1 by 1, which makes this a 3 by 3 space. And it is going 2 blocks up. Now it's not bound yet. We'll do that last. And by default, it's on a pulse, which is exactly what we want. Now down here is a little bit different. We need the setting to be set to the bud. So if we go to Just Dire Things, we can drag that in. So this is getting drug in directly from JEI. And then in the settings, I want the initial to be stage 1. Because if we take a look, any would be any stage. It would just detect it and just send it. But what we want to detect is this being, which is this, these are my assumptions. This stage is 0. And then 1 is after it has then changed state in this current dimension. And so if it does that, then that should send a signal. This should send a weak signal directly into the swapper. And when it does that, this will then send it to our next location. Now the same for the nether here. Up top, this is going to be the one that transfers it to this location. Then the bottom is going to do the detecting right here and going to be the one that sends it to the end. So the sensor, by the way, just to make sure that's clear, the sensor is detecting the middle block right here. And I've raised that up by doing this, just changing the height here. And the renders are all still the same. So this is just a render box. This is also a render box. Beautiful. Now these don't have power yet. We're going to get that set up later, especially after we get these linked up, because I want to make sure this all works, since it is a little bit of a pain to get this up and running and started. So now for the end, here's where things in this sensor kind of change a little bit, because we actually don't want to detect the final stage. We actually want to detect the point after the final stage, which would actually be stage 0. So far we have done stage 1, which is back in the overworld. We did stage 2, which is detecting, and this is all under assumptions, by the way, tier 2, which would be when it converts in the nether. And then tier 3 should be when it's actually farmable, when it looks like the actual time crystal block here. And so what we really need to do is send it back. And to do that, we are looking for stage 0. So at stage 0, this should be able to send a redstone signal. And it'll send that redstone signal to the swapper, which ultimately now needs to be chained and linked back to the overworld up 1. And so I've essentially got the rotation down. Now we've just got to get them all linked together. Now they're not going to be powered just yet, but to keep in mind the way we're linking this one right here gets linked to the overworld. And then I just got to continue to chain them. And chain, for example, the one in the overworld to the one that is in the nether to the top, and so on and so forth. So there we go. These two are now bound. And then I'll take this one, and we need to carry this into the nether just like this. And voila, that is now linked. Then I just need to take this one and complete the loop by going back to the end city and going back into the end here and clicking this on the top. And that right there should finish the loop. Now we can test this loop by simply using some buttons. And it'll be probably best to do this just to make sure that everything is working correctly. And the only place that we need to send a redstone signal is actually the block right here. So if I'm standing here and I click this button, this should send me to the overworld. It currently does not have power. So actually we've got to get all of these powered. I almost missed that part. Now this gives me a chance to try this out. So this right here is the energy transmitter from Just Dire Things as well. And what I'm able to do with this is I am able to give things power in an area. So if I create a larger area, for example, like this, and make it taller, mostly tall, we actually only need this to be a single block tall. We just need this to be quite tall like this. And then I drop this down. This will charge this and charge this wirelessly. If I take it down one more, then this also receives power. So this whole thing right here, I placed upside down and then placed a point on, or a gate on top, is now effectively powering all of these machines. Oh, that is so cool. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick the current setup up and I'm going to place it in the end. What should happen is it should get teleported back into the overworld because this block is now correct. So let's cut, we'll click this and shift right click. And then I can go ahead and cut this block and all of its components, which is kind of awesome that we can even do that. And then we're going to go to the end city where this resides. And by me placing this in here, it should be correct and complete the state, thus triggering that redstone. Okay, this right here, maybe this needs to be on weak signal or strong signal. Okay, it didn't actually send a pulse, which is interesting. Is it just not detecting this particular block state that we have it set in, which is what I would have assumed is stage 0. Oh man, if this doesn't actually work that way, then I have no idea. This is a deny list. Oh, it needs to be set to an allow list? Ah, that's right. Okay. So it needs to be, they all need to be set to an allow list. I don't know why that got teleported back either. So I just swapped them all to an allow list. Everything should be completed. So when I send this signal, it should have teleported this. Interesting that it didn't. This is a deny list. We don't have anything in here. Come on now. I mean, I can try and get it here by sending this a signal. That should be pulling this from the end. Oh, wait, it is working. Wait, it is just working. Okay, I didn't even have to touch anything. It was just working. Now, the detection here is where I'm going to be most concerned, right? Because right now it hasn't swapped, but once this has changed time, we should detect that it actually swaps. So maybe that was the issue, was like, it technically wasn't in a certain state or something. I have no idea why it did not swap. Very interesting. This is all chunk loaded. Everything is chunk loaded that these are in. So they should transfer. Okay, so let's actually time accelerate this. There we go, 256 times. That should grow crystals. And then whenever it completely depletes, which it should also do, if this swaps positions, we know that it's working. Oh, I'm actually kind of excited. And then we can set up a block breaker to actually break these crystals, and then we'll have automated time on our hands. Oh, this will be so good. Yes, let's break that. That. And this. Actually, I want to silk touch one of these, if I can. Ah, we cannot silk touch them. Interesting. I'll take that. Okay, beautiful. Let's time accelerate this again. It's actually kind of cool that it doesn't use like a whole lot of fluid to do this. Especially if we can get this, like I said, automated. Oh, there it goes. There it goes. Okay, so it teleported it after it completely changed versions. So this should be setting back in the overworld, back home. I can go ahead and get there with our portal. Oh man. That should, oh, that takes me here. That takes me here. Oh, I'm going to miss it. I'm going to miss it. It should be in the overworld though. And it should be in our room. Oh no, it's already gone to the nether. Oh no. Before we know it though, it should make its way right back here. And be completed and everything. It's going to make its way back. Right now, it has to be in the nether. And there it is. So we have this actually working now, and it is 100% automated. Okay, all we have to do now is just get the production and breaking of the crystals, and we can do that with a dire breaker. So I just need an advanced block breaker, and I have an item collector to pick up the items and put them inside of the personal barrel. This also, I set the range to basically cover the entire room. Now, as far as the speed per ticks, this doesn't have to be that fast, so I'm actually going to set this to like 10. That way it's not running as often, and I expanded this, so we can get rid of that. And now we should focus on the breaker. Now, by default, it's not going to break anything right away, but I do need to get this expanded, and let's go ahead and set that to 1, 1, 1, just like that. And then we need to move this into the correct offset. If I can figure the offset out right. It's one of these buttons. That's wrong, and there we go. One more. So now that we know the offset, I think that we should be able to filter this by item, and we'll put the time crystal in as the item that it's filtering by. And by default, we want this to be an allow list. So essentially, we're going to break only the things that can actually drop the time crystals, which should be a fully completed version of this. If we fail this, it is going to break the block here, and it will cause us to have to restart. and definitely not going to be good. For now, I can just go ahead and put a regular diamond pickaxe in here. Of course, a Celestia gem or higher pickaxe would be necessary, but nothing should break, which is good. That's what we want. But once this is fully grown, or when a crystal is fully grown, that's when we want it to break the block. Okay, so I think that is essentially the automation, and our product is going to go into the personal barrel. And so this should be a buildup of time crystals, which will allow us to easily make time fluid. So I might as well use up some of our time fluid here and accelerate this to max. Aha! And you've seen it just created one, and it actually broke it. Oh, that is beautiful. And now we have time crystals in here, and they are fully automated now. So now with the production of time crystals, oh man, the future is looking very good and very quick at that, because now we have access to what is essentially an unlimited temporal pouch or time in the bottle. And so this time wand, we could automate 100% by, for example, using some way to detect our inventory. I don't know, maybe with a player accessor that could detect if an item, for example, this fluid canister is empty. Once it is empty, we can then pull it out of our inventory using something like modular routers, or we can use, like I said, the player accessor. There's ways of doing it, the inventory holder and stuff like that. And we can have it auto refilled and sent back into our inventory, always maintaining a full container. And we can definitely automate the in-world production of the time fluid now that we have the crystals going. That is going to be something we definitely work on in the future. But I think for today, that is going to have to be it. Time to call it quits for the day. And well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and hopefully this was worth your time. If it was, be sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't already, and well, give this video a huge thumbs up. And with that being said, it's now time to thank the amazing supporter of today's episode. And that huge thanks is going to go out to The Quiet Gamer 19. Thank you so much, by the way, for your amazing support in choosing to support me over on the Discord by becoming a Discord premium member and supporting in one of the best ways possible. Guys, I look forward to seeing you, of course, in the next episode, where we're going to be diving into some more tech. And of course, as always, thanks for watching. Bye!